Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be letting you know all about a vehicle which I absolutely hated until the 1.13 update which just came out this week. This is the KV-4 Kreslavsky. This vehicle cost me, I can't exactly remember, about 10,000 bonds, and I might as well have just been throwing them away, at least with my enjoyment of the vehicle. This tank was good for two things. One, at least when I was playing it, feeding the enemy team a lot of hit points. And secondly, I guess it was okay for when you got to side scrape around a corner because the turret is rear mounted, as we can see here. Now, Wargaming have significantly changed the KV-4 Kreslavsky, as we can see here. The KV-4 Kreslavsky you see on the left is from the old patch, and the KV-4 Kreslavsky on the right is in the new patch. We can see that Wargaming have significantly buffed the dispersion when you're moving, pretty much by about 33%. Well, exactly 33%. That means that you are going to be able to be so much more accurate on the move in this vehicle and be able to quickly engage after you've stopped moving. Secondly, it's now more mobile than ever. It can go at 40 kilometers an hour rather than 30. Add to this with its impressive reverse speed of 16 kilometers an hour, and this thing is an absolute shifter with its new engine power buff of 150 up to 1,350, giving it a decent power to weight ratio that is akin to that of a slower medium tank. To add to that, Wargaming have given it 200 hit points and also 20 millimeters of turret armor, and this has allowed this thing to just become an absolute juggernaut on the battlefield. But it's not just the buffs that have changed my enjoyment of this vehicle. It's the fact that I decided to completely change the way that I was going to play it. If any of you watched my video from about 2 or 3 weeks ago about the KV-5, yeah, I decided to set it up in exactly the same way to see what kind of stupid things we could be able to achieve with the durability and mobility setup on this tank. So firstly, what do you think happens when Wargaming buffs a tank's top speed by 10 kilometers an hour to 40? You put a turbo on it to max it out at 44. It weighs 90 tons. You take controlled impact on your driver, and you have a Patriot in front of you. Yeah, that's 1,300 damage with a shot and a ram. While the Patriot manages to finish me off, I think you can see why I've been enjoying playing this tank like this. So just like I said in my KV-5 video, when the enemy don't expect such a huge ram, it can really turn the tide in your favor in very unique situations. But here's the thing. If you set your vehicle up like this, does it mean that it's useless in every single other area? Well, in the example for the KV-4 Kreslavsky, it's got really bad base DPM, 1,600. And so one thing that I've been thinking to myself recently, and it works very well on my free-to-play account, is that gun rammers are not mandatory. Sure, firing faster inside the game is useful if you want to be able to get out that extra shot against your opponents, but when your rate of fire or your DPM is so darn bad to begin with all of the new equipment in Equipment 2.0, and now there's going to be more bounty equipment and bond equipment, buffing up even the equipment that's just gone into the game, it feels as if there are better options for vehicles than just going and taking your gun rammer, your vertical stabilizers, and your vents or your coated optics in every vehicle that you're going to be playing. Look at it like this. The KV-4 Kreslavsky's top speed buff of 10 kilometers an hour, combined with a turbo, we're kind of getting into this position as fast as the medium tanks are. And let's just see what's going to happen when we use this speed to really surprise our opponents, who, remember, are going to be taking a long time to be able to get up this hill, which we fortunately don't have to. And let's see what happens here as we come out around this corner with our new turbocharged KV-4 Kreslavsky, both with Wargaming's buff and also with the equipment on the tank. What I want to do right now is just side scrape out using the strength of the vehicle, and that defender thought that he was going to make the aggressive play. He's probably thinking, I'm a defender, finally get to be top tier against tier 7 tanks. I've got this one, right? Well, unfortunately, maybe just going to have to go roll again to be able to get another matchmaking like this, right? Getting the KV-4 Kreslavsky into this position was just absolutely outrageous. And you can't, just like I said, there's no comparison for being able to pull off 1,000 ram damage. There's also no comparison for a super heavy tank that can get into a position with a 44 kilometer an hour top speed limit. So just like with the KV-5, by using the modified configuration on this vehicle, it increases our engine durability. And so we can pretty much run the turbocharger the entire time. And that pumps our power to weight ratio of this vehicle up to about 17, which is not exactly the slowest of medium tanks now. You can get up slopes at a tremendous speed, you can really get into some early positions, and while you're definitely not going to be killing anything quickly when you're there, as we can see with this atrocious alpha damage of 320 for a tier 8 heavy tank and poor DPM to boot. When you're just this super heavy, also with 1,870 hit points, you can afford to take your shots, you can afford to be able to try and trade against your opponents. Unfortunately for me, this Black Prince is giving it a good go here. We managed to miss the weak point on top of the Black Prince, and I'm going to come around and see if we can bump them for a little bit of damage. We actually did 35 ramming damage there against the Black Prince. That's a little bit disappointing. The next one actually tracks the Black Prince, and we do 57 damage. We can actually hear the artillery shells coming in now, giving us a tell on when an artillery shell's about to hit our vehicle, as the sound goes a little bit gummy in your headphones, right? And now we're just bullying this Black Prince in this situation. But really what I wanted to highlight in this game is not just these micro shunts, even though they do add up. Those tiny little bumps into the Black Prince, even at slow speeds in close quarters combat, actually are adding up to about 200 or 250 damage in that scenario. But really to be able to get into that position early and totally smash the defender, and now be able to club through, and now also to have the extra hit points on the vehicle, the extra durability on our tracks to stop them from being taken off, and just going down a slope at 49 kilometers an hour there until we retract in a tank that weighs 90 tons with 200 millimeters of turret armor, 180 millimeters of frontal hull protection, 125 millimeters of side protection. Sure, it's fun for me, but also you can't help but worry about the fact that the game is just getting faster and faster and faster, and with the right setup and the right idea, being able to take super heavy tanks like this, 90-ton behemoths, and turning them into the mobility of more of a medium tank of old, there's it's pretty obvious as to why why I've gone from absolutely loathing this vehicle and hating it to now kind of enjoying it, at least until I wreck my engine. But luckily, the modified configuration means that when my engine gets damaged, it's not the be-all end-all. And while I'm definitely going to be a lot slower, the penalty that I get from a damaged engine is not going to cripple me completely and stop me from being able to play the rest of this battle. And so hopefully we're going to be able to get the artillery. Oh no, maybe if I'd had vertical stabilizers I would have been able to pull off the kill on the artillery. But here's the thing. At this stage of the battle, it's just about cleanup. Quite often I feel it's about having an impact early on in the battle to win one of those key locations, just like we did against the defender. And sure, while this is a favorable matchup, it wasn't just this situation where the KV-4 Kreslavsky was also effective. Let's go and take the KV-4 Kreslavsky in the worst possible matchup and see how it performs against tier 9 and tier 10 tanks. And to cap it all off, why don't we put it to the test on Malinovka? Yeah. This is one of the last things that you ever want to see in your tier 8 heavy tanks. Malinovka, tier 10 artillery, tier 10 tanks that you have to deal with. Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare for a super heavy vehicle like this. This tank, until this patch, or even in this patch, is completely designed to side scrape and to bully its opponents. But with the setup that I have, let's see how quickly we're able to get up on top of the hill and whether the competition for the hill is going to be the thing that makes the difference in this battle. Something that I'm always trying to do early on. I want to be effective early. I want to try and contest the most important locations. And I feel like for a heavy tank on Malinovka, there's only one position that you really want to contest, and that has to be the windmill. Unless you want to play your faster heavy tanks and maybe try and go across the field, or alternatively try and make a dip play across here like the Borask has, I think it's all about contesting the high ground so that then you can use that to be able to get a better line of fire against your opponent, or to maybe spot some of the campers down below. You don't want to give up the high ground because then they're going to be able to snipe down across all of the mid part of the map, and yeah, it's not really going to work out very well for you. So just take a look at this. Can you honestly believe how fast the KV-4 Kreslavsky is getting up on top of the hill? We're going at 28, 29, 30 there, upslope. That's because of the engine power buff, that's because of the turbo and the removed speed governors on the tank. Now a lot of you might be thinking, how can you afford to drop a repair kit on this tank? Well, remember, when your engine is protected, your fuel tanks are protected, you don't need a fire extinguisher. When we're using the modified configuration, that means that we're also repairing our tracks massively faster as well, and because of the enhanced durability, our tracks have more health to begin with, and when they are repaired, they go back to being full health. So let's see how it affects our mobility in this game. So we have got up on the hill at the same speed as the CS52 Lease and the M103. Usually we would be hanging round back here, and hanging round back here in a tank with a turret like this, we're never going to be able to penetrate the enemy turret armor, but they are definitely going to be able to handle ours, as we can see with the 430 shooting the weak point on top of the tank. I'm hoping now that the artillery are going to be able to put some rounds in, and unfortunately for me, we're not able to go through the CS52 Lease's upper hull. It's a bit of an ignorant shot there by me, I guess, because it was very well angled. So I'm starting to get a little bit worried. I'm really hoping this AE Phase 1 to my left is going to play very well, otherwise we could be in a very unfortunate situation here. However, maybe we can still get some top shots onto the M103 weak point. Oh, our shells aren't going anywhere. Well, yeah, not using vertical stabilizers definitely doesn't help the gun handling, and not using vents definitely doesn't help the accuracy on this tank as well. This is not a sniper, it's meant to be a short close quarters combat brawler. The M103 puts a heat round into our tank. He's going to go backwards and forwards to try and avoid our shell, but we're going to connect cleanly into the M103's lower plate. And the whole of the enemy team seems to be pushing forwards here because the AE Phase 1 is going to get shut down, meaning that it is now me against 3 tanks, including 2 tier 9s on top of the hill. Luckily, with a side shot into the Object 430, we're starting to look a little better here. The CS52 Lease and the M103 plowing around the corner. I'm hoping I can manage to ricochet a shell here from the M103. I do. He actually bounces a heat round, and I decide to rush forwards to try and avoid the CS52 Lease, who's now on full hit points. The artillery puts a shell into the M103, finishing them off, and we can actually kite this CS52 Lease right now around the windmill, hopefully also avoiding the enemy artillery fire. Can you believe the mobility on this thing? Who is outflanking who? Oh, well, there you go. How about that? 363 damage to the CS52 Lease, and we followed it up with a shell. We can hear the artillery shell coming in. We actually managed to evade it. We ram him for an additional 46, which allows us to finish them off with a 299 shell. And just like that, a full health CS52 Lease, without any assistance from our allies, gets shut down. Can you believe that collision? You can bully vehicles just like with the KV-5 in this tank now. In fact, I might go as far as to say that this vehicle's better than the KV-5 within that regard, because it does have a little bit more engine power. The only problem with this tank is that unlike the KV-5, this vehicle doesn't have preferential matchmaking, so you're quite often going to have to suffer against tier 10 vehicles, just like we are inside this game. And so bam, we won the hill. 2,000 damage dealt, 3 vehicles vanquished. It didn't really matter how much gold the enemy was spamming at us. The KV-4 Kreslavsky has remained on top. And so what can we do with this position on the high ground now? Remember, we don't have a gun rammer, we don't have vents, we don't have the vertical stabilizers on the tank. Right now, it's just about letting the game go on. It looks like I was actually on my desktop there, probably showing people the buffs to the KV-4 Kreslavsky, as this was during my stream, my release day stream on Wednesday. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, have you cherry-picked a few games here in the KV-4 Kreslavsky? I can tell you that the previous game and this game were back-to-back. Okay, so we've got a Borask down in the D5 area, and he's actually spotting a lot of very bizarre positions for the enemy tank destroyers. Can you believe it? I don't think I've ever seen 3 tank destroyers push through the center. But maybe they were just thinking, well, if they're winning the hill, maybe we can just shove through. We're top-tier tank destroyers. We've got to be able to do something, right? And I'm trying to use the minimap location, even though they're outside our render distance, to be able to get shells down onto the T110E3 and the T110E4. Unfortunately for me, we're not hitting any of our shells as of yet, but now we've got to try and get some rounds into the side of this Pantera. If we can manage to get rid of him, then he's not going to be able to shoot my Borask, who's now down to 73 hit points, and maybe we can still get a bit of a crossfire going on the T110E3 as well. The priority right now should be to make sure that this Pantera doesn't get cross shots on the Boras, because he's providing very important vision for our team. We can see that he actually spots the AMX 5120 on the enemy team that allows us to be able to get an additional shot. Can you believe how fast this tank goes backwards, by the way? With the reverse speed, a decent reverse speed, and also having the turbo on top of it, being able to go backwards pretty much nearly at 20 kilometers an hour is just absolutely outrageous. Okay, so we got the side of a T110E3 here, an important round. And we can see why it was also important to take the high ground of this map. By being up here now, we're stopping all of this crazy, silly maneuvers by the T110E3 in the middle of the map and managing to get some crossfire and some harassment on them. Now the Pantera looks like they're actually trying to push up on top of the hill. I'm hoping that my team are able to get some good shells. And so you can see I turn around and I say thank you to the T95 on my team for shutting down that Pantera, because the last thing that I wanted was to get spotted, where then the Conqueror gun carriage, to all intents and purposes, would have been able to finish me off in a single shell. Talking about finishing off in a single shell, I tried to put a round into the side of the T110E3, but we can hear the artillery, I guess, going for the T95. Doesn't look like it was fatal damage, with the T95 still on a good chunk of hit points. I tell the T95 that somebody was here. I ping the map. I say that I got spotted to warn the T95 as they are about to make their hero push down the hill from Malinovka to see if they can spot most of the enemy vehicles that they might be about to get spotted. Talking about getting spotted, it looks like the ISU 152 spotted me from right down in this location here. And I'm very lucky to not get hit by the AP round, and it looks like it just managed to hit my tracks. And we're still in it, and happy to be still in it, because we've still got a long way to go in this game. The enemies have still got 6,000 hit points, and all of our hit points are on the tank destroyers, who are kind of just chilling at the back of the map. And you know how it is when tank destroyers try to attack tank destroyers on Malinovka. Quite often, it definitely doesn't go too well. Alright, so my very bold and brave T95 has shoved down the slope, manages to light up the ISU 152, allowing us to put a shell in. I'm going to try and blind fire again. I was hoping the artillery is going to be able to deliver the shell. Looks like the artillery did splash a little bit, but my shell did not, and the T95 finishes off the ISU 152. And once again, I say thank you to the T95, because they are doing the work that I just didn't have the hit points or the armor to be able to do. And really, the T95 is picking up the slack by our medium tanks, who have all managed to get themselves killed and playing a beautiful role. Really, what this T95 is doing by pushing down and actually being aggressive and taking the fight to the campers is what you need. We've only got 5 minutes left on this game to be able to get through Malinovka and be able to shut down the Conway and the Conqueror gun carriage. So where is this UDES going to be? They have managed to pick up a kill, but they haven't been spotted at all in this game, so it's a mystery as to where the most sneaky Tier 8 tank destroyer is going to be. There's the artillery though. We fire on the move. We don't manage to hit them. Vertical stabilizers would have done us proud. And I thank the T95 for the 3rd time this game. I hope he thinks that I'm not being patronizing. I genuinely was absolutely chuffed that T95 was doing the dirty work that I couldn't really manage to do myself, and our medium tanks have failed. And right now it's about taking the KV-4 Kreslavsky as quickly as we can towards the enemy UDES. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what do you think happens when a vehicle that's going at pretty much about 40 kilometers an hour manages to connect a shell into, well, not even a shell, just connects a ram into a very lightly armored Swedish tank who shoots the ground in front of him? Yep, that tiny collision was worth 380. I'm going to put a shell down onto his tracks to lock him in place, ram them again. Do I use a med kit to get rid of the stun? Yes, I do. And another ram, just to finish it off. Just to add that all up, that was pretty much about 600 ramming damage there on the UDES with those tiny little bumps. Really showing you just what an aggressive ramming setup, or shall I say a durability, mobility setup on this tank, with the added effect of being able to ram your opponents, can achieve, even in the worst possible matchmaking on a map that no bottom tier heavy tank ever wants to get on. So up until the patch, I'd never been able to get an ace tanker with the KV-4 Kreslavsky, and yeah, I was happy to be able to get 2 back to back on Highway and also on Malinovka. With the first round giving us a steel wall, a high caliber for the 3,500 damage that we dealt and the 4 kills, and we make a decent amount of credits profit, because remember, this is actually a premium tank with regards to its credit income. In the second round we get a steel wall, but I fired a lot of gold, but oh well, we still make 100,000 credits anyway. And so the KV-4 Kreslavsky, is it now a tank that I would recommend that you go to the bond store and drop all of your precious resources on right now to be able to get? No. But is it at least now a competitive tank within its own regards? Yeah. And I'm just so happy that I took the risk of putting the KV-5 setup that's just been working so well for me, and I'm having so much fun with it, on the KV-4 Kreslavsky and giving it a purpose in my garage. And yeah, it's gone from being something that I think a lot of people, when I'm streaming, voted for to kind of troll me, to now be something that I'm going to be rubbing my hands with glee, the opportunity of possibly pulling off one of those miracle magical rams, but also still being good in the close quarters combat as well. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, give the video a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know if you have a KV-4 Kreslavsky and if you have played it since the patch. Have you been enjoying it? Have you still been hating it? How do you feel the vehicle holds up? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.